Washington, D.C. Sniper, featuring John Allen Muhammad. Full name, John Allen Williams Muhammad. Crimes and sprees. John, famously dubbed the Beltway Sniper, was the mastermind behind a series of shootings along with robberies that operated in several states across the United States of America. He had a 17-year-old accomplice who goes by Lee Boyd Malvo, who was also manipulated apparently by John. The victims were random. They were not a specific race, gender. It was really anyone in the streets John felt like shooting. The motive behind these acts were multi-layered, one of them involving an attempt of murder towards his ex-wife, Mildred Muhammad. The reason why other people were involved in victims due to the fact John hoped it would seem like he would murder anyone instead of targeting his wife directly in one go. The states that were terrorized by the acts from John were Tucson, Arizona, Virginia Beach, Tacoma, Washington, D.C., Clinton, Maryland, Montgomery, Alabama, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The spree had operated on October of 2002 for 3 weeks straight. A lot of the times John would drive him and his accomplice with a blue 1990 Chevrolet Caprice, traveling through streets states as they progressed their spree. Ultimately, 17 people lost their lives and 10 people had survived. However, they were critically injured, some of them healing or some of them receiving permanent damage. Investigation. The investigation with the DC snipers was considered America's largest and most chaotic manhunt in history. In addition, the FBI were involved in the hunt, investigating with their power to prevent the shootings from spreading any further. At first, the task force had thought a white box truck or old white Chevy Astro van was responsible due to the fact they had spotted them seemingly fleeing the scene. However, it was a mistake. John would contribute and engage himself on taunting the police, leaving ransoms, or threatening letters at the crime scenes. There was a confusion between the location of Montgomery, Alabama to Montgomery County, Maryland. However, eventually using the databases of immigrations along with fingerprint evidence, they would discover the mastermind of John. Immediately, it was discovered John would drive a Chevrolet. The authorities had warned everyone about the vehicle, which led to one day, during midnight morning on October 24, it was reported by a male named Ron Lance. The Chevy Caprice was arrested in Myersville, Maryland. So a SWAT team immediately arrived and raided the vehicle, pulling both John and Lee to custody as they woke up from their sleep, exhausted, high stress. It was discovered inside the vehicle there was a Bushmaster XM-15 along with a .223 caliber semi-automatic rifle. Trial and court proceedings. John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo had different legal proceedings. First, John was tried in Virginia Beach in November 2003 for the murders that occurred in that location. With the evidence they had, it was proven that John was the mastermind behind the shootings and the murders, charged for several first degrees of murder, which sentenced him to death punishment for the crimes occurred in Virginia. However, there was another trial on May 2006 in Maryland. During that trial, John and Lee were reunited. However, the young accomplice had turned on him, standing as a witness for the apparent manipulation done towards Lee. However, due to the different laws, the system began to clash with each other, due to the fact one state allowing John to be locked up, however the other forcing him a death sentence as an appropriate consequence. He was specifically received 6 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole for the Maryland trial. During both trials, John maintained a cold demeanor, stoic, unhinged from his sentence, showing no remorse. In fact, he refused to make eye contact with the families of or relatives of the victims. In addition, he had a confrontational moment between him and Lee Boyd Malvo during the testify. Between the years from his trial to the day he was executed, the death sentence, he was locked up in Greensville Correctional Center, Virginia. Childhood. From the records and conversations recorded, it was discovered John's childhood was deeply unstable and marked by major trauma. When John was 3 years old, his mother had a cancer condition, leading to her passing away just several months later when John turned 4 years old. John's father did not have the interest or desire to take care of him after the passing of his mother, therefore he was taken by his grandparents and an aunt who was known to commit many crimes in the neighborhood of Baton Rouge. The relationship was highly abusive. John would often get violent attacks or be forced to witness the domestic violence itself. Ironically, at school, he was considered a decent student and behaved well and academically did alright. Personal life that would possibly affect their crimes and acts. John would enlist in the U.S. Army as a National Guard in 1978. He was a combat engineer, which was a work involving creating and building machines, in other words, a mechanic for military weapons. He was considered a highly skillful man with the military work. It was reported on 1983 though, John had stolen military property or some sort of weapons, leading to demotion in rank for his punishment. There was another incident involving John throwing bombs at officers due to his resentment in 1991. While it was not proven and no charges were involved, though John was suspected. It was reported by a fellow soldier and crew members that when he returned from the duty in the Middle West, John had become more paranoid, controlling, and increased with emotional outbursts. His former name was John Allen Williams, which was changed into John Allen Muhammad due to the switch in religion to Islam, or Muslim Islamic religion. John was married to Mildred Muhammad in 1988, having 3 children, seemingly a happy family. However, it was not happy. It was reported John had abused Mildred both physically and verbally, making a sense of fear for Mildred to let John take care of their children. Personal life, potentially affecting their crimes and acts. John was forced to divorce Mildred in 1999, which was approved by the court in 2000. He broke the legal rules though several times, involving breaking into Mildred's home to watch her sleep. In other words, a form of stalking. In addition, he had kidnapped his 3 children and moved to the Caribbean where he met his young murder accomplice, Lee Boyd Malvo, at the same time. However, Mildred would soon take her children back into her custody, in addition making a strong restraining order between John and Mildred. During the marriage before the divorce, he actually made some friends, a tire repairman named Robert Holmes and a barber named Jerry O'Neill. They had both witnessed the seemingly caring and loving side of John. They would witness the positive demeanor when they would hang out or chat, along with their children joining in. It was reported John and his children had highly good manners. They would respond yes sir or no sir as a response, making their family respected, in addition making it difficult to believe the actions John had made and committed was true. Pivotal events. John Allen Williams Muhammad was born on the 31st of December, 1960. On 1964, John's mother had passed away, and he was abandoned by his father. He served in the military from 1978 to 1995. Between 1999 and 2000, he was in a custody battle with Mildred Muhammad. He met Lee Boyd Malvo on 2000. He was arrested on October of 2002. Between 2003 and 2009, he was tried for the murders and shootings occurred in a variety of states in the United States of America. Quotes from John Allen Williams Muhammad. "You have become my enemy, and as my enemy, I'll kill you. You have no idea what I am capable of. One shot, one kill to the head. Never leave my enemy behind. I know what happened, and I know what didn't happen. I am saying you that I had nothing to do with this. There are things you may know, but you don't know. I am a holy prophet. God speaks directly through me. I might be in another planet. I don't understand the gravitational pull. Yes, sir. Sir, my legal name is John Allen Muhammad. Can you please tell me what's going on? And you're telling me the reason why I don't have my children and won't be able to keep my children because I don't have the proper paperwork yet." Forensic inferences. While it's likely his crimes were caused by brain damage he had likely suffered during his army life, there is a large possibility his past childhood have fueled the killings despite the different motives. John losing his mother and father in a way was difficult for the young John. He had no one to rely on. In addition, he was picked on by his relatives and likely some students at school had added the bullying, making a sense inside him, thinking he was never recognized for his talents or hobbies. When pulling the trigger, it's likely that hatred combined with other factors leading him to pull the trigger each time. He likely desired domination due to the fact as a child he was either dominated by others or had a tragic surrounding and environment. While it may be subjective and difficult to believe, it's likely he had love towards his children, as in his mind it's likely thought that they were the only hopes and excitement he had. In his mind, he felt a sense of hurt as his children were taken away from him, which is another factor that likely combined, likely causing him to pull the trigger in each of his weapons. Other than emotional trauma, it is likely as doing the engineering, combat, and military, there was a lot of chemicals involved, already adding a minor damage, and likely causing to expand during the duty in the Middle West, as reported from the peers and members around him. Chemicals in the military life can be serious and could lead to future destruction, along with permanent damage in brain cells, which is likely what caused John to fall under, making him one of the fallen victims of brain damage. Legacy and impact. The case of Washington, D.C. snipers remains one of the most known shooting cases in the U.S. John Allen Muhammad is recognized as a notorious manipulator, even till this day. As of 2026, Lee Boyd Malvo is locked up in Red Onion State Prison in Virginia. Victims' families were left with a deep damage in their mental and emotions. Citizens who survived the sniper attacks will never forget what had occurred that year on 2002.